Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Coffee Talk in the Athletic Training Room. This will be our first live streamed episode. So if you are listening in or on Instagram, check us out, Athlete Advise at Athlete Advise on Instagram, and we are live streaming this episode of Coffee Talk. No guests today, but I wanted to dive into something that near and dear to my heart personally, and that um, I think will provide some insights now that baseball season is in full swing. And that is specifically um, how to prevent injuries in overhead pitching, and more specifically, things that are often overlooked when it comes to overhead throwers and prevention. Now, um, I spent the better part of a decade of my career working with baseball players and softball players, and so really fine-tuned some things and did a lot of research and found what worked for me. Now, that doesn't necessarily means this is what's going to work for all athletes, but it's certainly some things to consider. And I'm not going to get into too much detail. We can do that at a later date, but I really just wanted to kind of come on and do a short episode about some things I think that are often overlooked by a lot of people. And perhaps this is old news, but hopefully not. And so the first thing that I wanted to talk about, and something that we looked at at one of my stops in my career, is um, the return of internal rotation after a pitching outing. And there's a lot of research out there that suggests that one, a lack of internal rotation, be it true GERD or simple loss of motion due to throwing, could be contributing to some injury because you're losing motion. You're not able to slow the arm down as efficiently, and therefore we have some, obviously some issues and injuries occurring in the deceleration phase. And with that said, if we can return the motion, the internal rotation to its pre-outing level as closely as possible, then we have in theory, a decreased chance of injury. Now, we looked at this and we didn't see a big difference before and after. However, that being said, during that season, we looked at it. We had a very small sample size. I think our N was like 9. This is all on published data, by the way. And our results really showed no significant uh, differences. Um, I think the reason for that probably was, one, our sample size was so low, but two, because we are already going through an extensive preventative maintenance program that focused on returning that internal rotation to normal. And so I think because of that, it may have skewed our results a little bit. So it'd be interesting to see if there's a little bit more of a difference if we were to expand that sample size a little bit. So I'd love to hear everybody's thoughts on that in the comments. Please feel free, and we'll address it in future episodes. If it's something that you've looked at, if it's something that you've noticed, if it's, but I think if we're having pitchers throw, particularly relievers, and they're not fully recovering, meaning that they're not getting their range of motion back to full uh, pre-outing levels, so whatever your baseline is, then we potentially are setting ourselves up for injury. So food for thought, and certainly something to look at. And that all comes back to our history that we take, our baseline physicals. And if you're not getting preseason measurements every year, you need to be. And you need to be measuring with the goniometer multiple times a year. And I would suggest at least once a week, particularly in your pitchers. The second thing I would look at, in addition to that internal rotation deficit, is obviously maintaining elbow extension. In my experience, velocity tends to decrease if our pitchers are not um, decreasing that flexion contracture that occurs in a lot of high velocity throwers. And you can do this a lot of different ways, but really the biggest thing is one, recovery. Your recovery routine should be one that is comprehensive. Two, it should be one that is involves soft tissue and range of motion work. So if you're not comfortable with using your hands and you're working with overhead throwers, you need to be comfortable working with your hands and working with overhead throwers. So anything from iastom to just massage to laser ultrasound, I know most of what we do is not proven. It's all theoretical. I get that, but at the end of the day, we have to use what works. And if it works and it's not costing us a lot of time and money, then maybe it's worth it trying. So really focus on those the range of motion at the elbow, particularly when we talk about a decrease in velocity, because I think if as that does not recover, you're going to see a dip. And when you start seeing that dip in velocity, the forces have to go somewhere, and eventually the forces will transfer up to the shoulder or down to the front hip. So things to think about. And the last thing I want to touch on today, and it's a shorter episode, I get that, but I really kind of wanted to get this out there while baseball season is fresh in everybody's mind and everybody's team has a chance. And obviously, college has been going on for a minute. But the third thing is um, thoracic rotation and basic movement patterns. And this seems really silly, I think. But if you lay your athletes on the ground in supine, particularly your pitchers, even the best athletes will not be able to roll over and do it the right way. And you can look at Jonda and the Jonda techniques and um, when we talk about rolling patterns and movement patterns and things like that. But so many athletes have been developed in a way that they don't move properly. And what I mean by move properly is not just from a squat, snatch, deadlift, power clean, bench press perspective. I mean, from the ground up at the most basic level, newborn movement patterns when we talk about movement development. And it is amazing to me how many elite athletes are not able to do a simple motion like lay on their back and roll to their front and do it properly, or lay on their front and roll to their back and do it properly. And a big reason for this is one, they can't sequence the muscles correctly, um, which leads to imbalance or could be due to imbalance, but also can lead to injury. And the second thing it does is it means that their thoracic spine is either weak or immobile or tight or not focused on. And the thoracic spine is one of the most underutilized and underappreciated areas when it comes to the throwing athlete. And if we can maximize the ability or the efficiency that our athletes are using to really move with at the thoracic spine, then we can take stress off the shoulder, we can take stress off the elbow, we can take stress off the hips and the knees, etc., on down the chain. So if we're basing all of our movement patterns and all of our work as athletic trainers with throwing athletes on the kinetic chain, which we should be, then the principle of the T-spine cannot be ignored because it along with the core are the two things that are connecting the top and the bottom. And if there's a kink in the armor, if there's a chink in the armor from top to bottom and it's in the middle, if you have a broken piece of the chain in the middle of the chain, that chain is going to be weak. That chain is going to be defective, and eventually that chain is going to give to the forces that are involved with throwing a baseball and or a softball, which, as we already know, particularly overhead, are approaching maximum tensile forces, if not exceeding maximum tensile forces every single time that we take the field. So just some things to think about. We'll get into some more depth in later episodes, but in lieu of having a guest this week. Really just wanted to touch on those things, and I hope everybody enjoyed it. Thank you for everybody tuning into our live stream for this episode. Remember, you can get all of the episodes of Coffee Talk in the Athletic Training Room wherever you get your podcasts. If you're on Facebook as an athletic trainer and you have not already, make sure you join the Athletic Training Room Facebook group. Request to join. It is a group exclusively for athletic trainers and sports medicine physicians. We'd love to have you there. A lot of great insights from a lot of different people. Products geared specifically to athletic trainers, services geared specifically to athletic trainers, continuing education pieces, etc. So make sure you jump on that if you have not already. Um, In the meantime, if there are any questions about this episode or any of our other episodes, make sure you check out episode 1, which was Anthony Genstad with Firefly Recovery, and episode 2 of season 1, which was this past week with Adam Halper with Wave On Health. Very good episodes, excellent interviews. Listen anywhere on the go, anywhere you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube or on the Facebook group. Thanks, everybody. Hope everybody has a great week, and we will talk again soon. Make sure you message the group, or you can message Athlete Advise on Instagram to request any topics for future conversation, or to recommend guests for the podcast that you think may be able to give some really great insights for their peers. Take care, everybody, and we will talk soon.